Welcome to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth, and we're here to preserve and promote culture, one weekly conversation at a time. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show through iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, and a whole bunch of other venues. Just visit our sites, chimeraobscura.com/VM or vmspod.com to find more information, along with our RSS feed. And follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at VMSPod. Well, I was just about decompressed from the past 3 or 4 months of crazy work and life and various health stuff before I realized, or it was pointed out to me, that I need to schedule a meeting with my board of trustees at my day job for our what's supposed to be our quarterly get-together. Took me a while to get a quorum and to clear a day and time to meet online, but that turns out to be tomorrow. So after this, I will be getting back to writing the agenda and the president's report and making sure the finances are clean enough for the treasurer to report on and all the other stuff that goes into running a nonprofit trade association. I do this allegedly every quarter. I'm not too worried. I don't get freaked out. I used to worry that, as with every other aspect of my life, everybody was waiting to see me fail or waiting to contribute to that. And it took a few years with the association, which I launched in 2014, to realize they are there to see me succeed and to help me succeed, not to foster my anxiety about failing. So I've largely gotten over that, and this one I'm not particularly worried about. It's just coming up quickly, and there's been some upheaval among board members just in terms of members having to leave because of merger and acquisition activity in the sector and blah, 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 all sorts of things that I have no influence over. I'm getting pretty good about the things I don't have influence over. So that is a sign of growth, I guess. Anyway, it's all part of the job, and things should quiet down after this through year end, which means I can maybe take care of some long-term planning and other work projects and some other stuff I've been meaning to get to. As ever, sorry to bore you with the day-to-day life, but without all that stuff, you don't get the show. So on the plus side, I am 2 weeks ahead on the podcast, in addition to this week. So I don't have that sort of stress and anxiety hanging over me. I've got a few more guests lined up, and in fact, pitched someone yesterday as you could be the last guest of the year before we go into 2024. And I do have most of January and February planned out too. Anyway, it's weird to be sort of ahead, but I'm sure something will fall through on me and leave me scrambling, as things tend to do. But all of that said, let's get to this week's show. My guest this time is the last guest I had at the Small Press Expo, or SPX, last September. And she is one of my favorite artists and cartoonists, Leslie Stein. Leslie has a new book out from Drawn and Quarterly called Brooklyn's Last Secret. It's a 300-page comic about an indie band that goes on tour. And that's it. It's an absolute delight, though. Leslie draws on some of her own experiences in a band and going on tour to show us the dynamics at play in the tour van and the hotel rooms and gas stations on the road and the late nights and what you do during the off days and the backstories and the old friends and the new fans you meet and more. And it's all rendered in her just absolutely gorgeous cartooning style and watercolors. Brooklyn's Last Secret, it's a treasure because Leslie manages to capture so much of the lives of her 4 lead characters without the need to have them open up verbally and explain things. Their banter, their wordless escapades, their expressions and posture show us who they are a lot better than any, deep introspection and big confessional moment would. And she manages to evoke the world of life on the road with these musicians who know they have little to no hope of getting signed to a label. and she makes it a joy to follow. It's not hopeless. It's you know, the fun of these people and their lives and what they do and what they do in their off time. And anyway, it's Leslie's cartooning is at its absolute best in this comic. She really brings across her characters in that minimalist, striking style that she uses, while their environments feel utterly real and concrete. Well, her dialogue and her character designs are just flawless. Really, it's a masterpiece of storytelling without calling attention to itself as this is a major statement. I'm not good at describing what makes Leslie's visuals and her storytelling so special. You really have to experience her comics on the page. So check out Brooklyn's Last Secret. Along those lines, I should point out, as we talk about it during the show, this comic was first serialized on Instagram, a few sets of panels at a time, because you only put up, I think, 10 images in a single Instagram post. And it began coming out in July 2020, while we were all in the midst of COVID lockdowns. And if you've blocked out your memories of that time, let me tell you, the laughs and artistic pleasures were few and far between. The idea that Leslie took that time to start a 300-page comedy about life on the road while all of us were stuck inside and stewing and filled with our apocalyptic worries, well, that's all of a piece with what makes her such a special artist and person. So, you know, next time things are dire and we're all filled with rage, you know, maybe if you have any sort of artistic inclination, think about what you can do to bring something a little joyous into the world. And I loved Brooklyn's Last Secret when it was in process. I talk about it during the episode, the joy I had when I'd see a new post from Leslie about it on Instagram. And I love this collected edition even more because here you see the pages, you get how everything is interplaying in a way that you don't when you're just flicking from panel to panel online. So Brooklyn's Last Secret, drawn in quarterly, Leslie Stein, go give it a read. Go get it. Anyway, as other caveats go, just like last week with Josh Bayer, there's this weird beeping static thing in the background. I thought it was an iPhone Bluetooth thing. I'm thinking now maybe it's something in the electricity and the power line I was using for the digital audio recorder. But it's not too noticeable unless you're me. The other caveat, just like with this intro, I really talk a lot in this episode. I think it was partly the end of the festival thing. I think it was just being around so many people and talking all weekend. I just kind of was in that flow, and I was dealing with some heavy stuff in my life and in other people's lives. And just talking to Leslie and letting go of some of that for the fun of just having a conversation, and the fact that she seemed legitimately interested in what I was talking about. You know, I kind of over-gabbed, I guess. Anyway, this is a lighter show than some of my recent ones, which is also probably a good thing. So enjoy. Now here's Leslie's bio. Leslie Stein is the cartoonist of the LA Times Book Prize award-winning Present, as well as I Know You Rider, Bright-Eyed at Midnight, and the Eye of the Majestic Creature series. Her diary comics have been featured on The New Yorker, Vice, and in the Best American Comics anthology. She lives in Brooklyn, and she plays guitar, not bass. Her new book is Brooklyn's Last Secret. And now, the 2023 Virtual Memories Conversation with Leslie Stein. Tell me where Brooklyn's Last Secret came from for you as a comic.
So it was
and
during,
how it changed. Yeah, sorry.
It was during the pandemic, and I didn't have a book project. And I think we've talked about this before, where I kind of start a comic, I don't really know what I'm doing, and I continue out of stubbornness. Mm-hmm. And also to not ever feel like I'm working on like some kind of magnum opus. You know, so I'll just do this one, and this will be 300 pages, so then like I'll work on that other one later. So this was a way to kind of cope with the pandemic, and like it's a comedy, so it's just like being on the road with this band, so I could really put myself in that position. And it really helped me through the pandemic of going through it alone, you know.
And it is a lighter tone. Like you say, it's comedy.
Yeah.
Did you need that? Not just because of the pandemic, but the heaviness of some of your previous books leading up to this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was like, what I call it is having green beans for dinner so you can have chocolate cake for dessert. So this is like my chocolate cake.
It's a light touch, but it's gorgeous. The characters still feel, well, they feel real because they're fictional. It's different from, reading you in memoir where there's an assumption of the reality of the figures, creating guys out of whole cloth, even if they're all coming from your life in different ways. This is a joy. Reading it when it was first being serialized on Instagram and then seeing it in collection is it's something I'm curious about. A, the decision to serialize, and B, whether you expanded, revised, or changed for the final print version.
Well, I was really doing it for print. Everything I do is for print. But I thought it would be a fun thing to serialize because each chapter, they're in a different city.
Yeah.
So I could go like, this is, your city too. And everyone else is at home, so they need content. Mm-hmm. And all my touring musicians were at home. So, so I decided to put online for camaraderie, but also, as just to make people feel better and not, everyone's like doom scrolling at that time.
Yeah.
And so I had people reach out to me and be like, it's so refreshing. And all of a sudden it's just like this band in Milwaukee, like on ecstasy or something.
Did it, because I'm always looking for the darkness side, of course, did you feel sort of pressure as it was going along that, oh God, these people are relying on me to give them some lightness or some joy? This is the sort of thing that goes through my head. And of course, you're an artist as opposed to me being a neurotic. But,
No, but I think that would be, I wouldn't assume that I'm that important. Like when people said, it was helping them, it was a small number of people, and that was a very delightful thing, but I wasn't worried about, disappointing anyone.
Okay. Because again, that governs my life, as you know, but, and it had the same effect for me. I mean, just when I'd be on Instagram and I would see the first panel of your stuff, it would just be this moment of joy. I'm like, oh, good. There's going to be 8 or 9 panels of Leslie's new strip. I'll wait for the next installment to finish the day. And it was meaningful.
That's so kind of you to say.
It's, I told Roger Langridge recently, he does a daily diary comic through Patreon. Mm-hmm. I said, the idea that I get up around 5:30 and he's in the UK, so he's already posted it, mid-morning for him, and just the idea of having those sorts of things that just, a cartoonist made this lovely work, and it gets to either start my day or be this nice punctuation as Brooklyn's was. Mm-hmm. You guys bring joy into the world, so thank you. At least to weird guys like me.
No, I'm sure it's his pleasure. I'm sure it's cathartic. Mm-hmm. I would assume for him as well, and for me.
No, how much of the reality of touring did you bring into this from your I don't want to say rock band, psychedelic band, or how do you describe
rock and roll band? Yeah.
But from your experience as opposed to Major Threat.
A lot of it is based on experiences that I had touring, and friends of mine, if you think about tour comedies, right? You think about like Spinal Tap or like Almost Famous. Mm-hmm. And these are these big bands because, of course, who would want to follow a tiny band? You're not going to get that movie made, although if anyone's listening and wants
I'll forward to producers.
Yeah. So for me, it was just a way to show the reality of how most people experience it. Shitty hotel rooms, but also not that bad. Like, I didn't want to make it, awful.
No, again, the camaraderie among the characters. Whatever the van smells like does not come up, which is important. Because I know what it's like just traveling and traveling and traveling for hours with people.
Yeah.
But it still has that sense of, we're never big. The characters, once their ages start to come out near the end, it's there's no, big label in the future, but it's the joy of doing this.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel about, cartooning.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and this we're at a convention right now, and talking to people and their expectations of, you know, being an artist versus the reality of being an artist. And so most of the characters in this band are like around 40. And then you have the new singer who's 26, who is the one who doesn't get it yet. Mm-hmm. So you can kind of see that through his eyes where he's like, oh, we're playing, you know, they go into Red Rocks. And he's like, we're going to play the main stage. And they're like, you play near the bathrooms. Yeah. And this is the best show we have on tour, you know? But hopefully he'll get it in about 10 years.
Do you see yourself, not to ask if you've got a sequel in mind at all, but do you see you continuing with these characters in any sort of context?
I'd like to. I kind of like to take a break from them, but I have another book in my head about them, you know, further down the line. Mm-hmm. So yeah, of course. I think once you spend that much time with any character, you imagine them in their past and also in their future. Because even though this book, you know, I don't use any. It's all dialogue based, yeah. So you only
no captions or narration or anything, yeah.
Right, so you're only getting the characters through what they say and their mannerisms. And so I have this whole backstory for all of them and who they are in the future that I think infuses like why they would make a decision to say a certain thing in a certain place. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense. Yeah. Like they're people to me, they're real, you know?
And it's the segments where much of it is their interactions with one another, and then twice you break them off into each one of them having their own day, yeah. Basically, which narratively is always my thrill. Like I always have I just want to follow that particular person out of the main story and into, you know, what their life is actually like. And in both cases, it brings so much more fullness to them when you see them in the lives they have without each other, and how they're reacting to the world around them.
I think that's where it really gets started, like the whole book, even though that's maybe like page 70, which I should admit here, but it's like the beginning, you know, it feels like lighthearted and silly and they're doing all this stuff. And then I think when you start to see them in their own world is when you start to get to know them, and then you would be invested in them as individuals, but also how they're interacting. Mm-hmm. And like some information you don't even get till the end, like the backstory of two of the characters. All of a sudden at the end, it's like, oh, it kind of makes sense that they act this way around each other.
You didn't need to throw it into the foreground early on.
Right.
How did, in that respect, the book evolve for you? I mean, I don't know what structure you had in mind at the beginning or how organic it was as you were working your way through it.
I think it was very organic. I mean, I got about 30 pages into it, which is about as far as I'll go with something before deciding to ditch it or keep going. Mm-hmm. And so I was still having fun with it. And wait, what exactly is the question?
Oh, I forgot. How did the book change? You know, did you have an idea of the structure outside of they're going to a bunch of different cities? Or was it open-ended as you were working through it? Or did you kind of have an idea of where you wanted to take it?
I had an idea of where I wanted to take it. I mean, it's really not plot-based. It's really a character study. So really,
it's a road trip.
It's a road trip, yeah. And so what I did really is I just got a map and I just scheduled their tour like a tour manager would, and like, okay, like they're going to be playing. And I played a lot of places on the map, obviously, that I made, but then some I wouldn't. It was also this really fun way of like reaching out to other musicians, being like, okay, so they're a mid-level band and they're playing in like Kansas City or whatever, and people would be like, okay, they're either going to play this place or this place. I was like, is there a bar they can go to afterwards? And they're like, oh yeah, down the road there's this. And so it was like plugging in things when I found that, and then just kind of having a little arc of like how I wanted their interactions to go and who they were going to meet and revisit along the way.
Did you feel like one female character and three male characters in the band, did you feel like the female was the Leslie stand-in, or, you know, did you feel like you were kind of distributing yourself among the other members too?
I'm kind of a hybrid, I think, of Ed and Lilith. Yeah. Obviously, like, I was in a band with three men for a long time, so I know that dynamic of being, you know, the only woman and kind of trying to be tough. You know, and it's because you don't want people to think of you that way. You just want to be one of the guys. So yeah, I'm like both of them a little bit. But yeah, it's funny because a lot of people just assumed that it was me. Yeah. And when I was putting it online, this is just funny. I put it online. People are like, "Oh, you're in, you know, Detroit or something." I'd be like, dude, no one's traveling. No one's on tour. Like,
we're all in lockdown right now.
Yeah. Like, what
Unless some pass where I get to go around the country.
Yeah. So that was pretty funny, too.
Mm-hmm. And I assume the instance where Lilith starts to lose her goddamn mind because somebody assumes she's a bass player is something you've gone through.
Oh, my God, yeah. You walk in and they're like, hey, play bass or sing?
The
like,
girl in the band must be the bass or tambourine.
Tambourine or keyboard sometimes. But I'd be like, no, guitar. And they're like, oh, okay.
Where did music begin for you? I don't think we ever talked about your I think we've mentioned music in the past conversations we've had, but I don't know the...
Yeah, so I started playing guitar when I was around 12. And then, kind of interesting backstory, it was the 90s, and my mother would make a lot of friends all over this community. She met some guy playing volleyball with him at the Y who had a Nirvana cover band.
Do you remember the name?
Yeah, Lithium.
I assumed.
Yeah. And I was 13, and what they were doing was they were touring around giving like depression screenings after Kurt Cobain died, and I looked like Kurt Cobain. I mean, I had long hair, like...
Yeah.
I can send you a picture to put up on the website if you want.
Yes,
so they're like, we want her because this gives us credibility because there's all older people. And so we played on like the classic rock radio station, Chicago, and some very bizarre stories with that. I drew a small comic about that in the Majestic Creature series, but didn't go in depth. And so I eventually summoned the courage to tell my mom I didn't want to be in the band anymore. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I just played with people. After I moved away from Chicago, I moved to San Francisco, started playing with people there, then eventually moved to New York and got a job in a record store on St. Mark's. It was a multi-level record video store, Kim's.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so I met everyone who worked there was a musician, so I started playing with a bunch of guys there. And I had a band for about 10 years and played with a bunch of other bands, went on tour. And so it's still part of my life. Every once in a while I play with people out, and it's fun.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you get to play at all the last couple of years since we've come out of lockdown, so you've been able to do any live shows.
Yeah, I've done about 3, just backing a particular friend up on guitar. But so it's nice. But I like not being in a band because I can say no.
Yeah. I get where you're coming from.
Yeah. I've done my time, so.
Well, let me ask and again, the joy of the book is that sense of camaraderie and community among the 4 of them, even while they're figuring out the dynamics with Marco, the new singer and all. Mm-hmm. We're at SPX. The contrast of band community versus the comics world, comics community, we'll put it that way. Getting back to festivals and interacting with people like this. Mm-hmm.
Well, the comics community, it's very broad and disjointed. Mm-hmm. And because I live in New York, my community of friends and musicians there, I mean, it's like a clique almost, but it's a revolving cast. There's certain people you're going to see at certain shows. I mean, not unlike this, but
all the superhero guys are up in Baltimore right now,
right.
Along with Gino and a couple of the other kind of borderline, but they'll make more money over at the Baltimore Comic Con instead. But go.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. I don't really compare them. I mean, obviously, there's kind of a different personalities.
Yeah.
I would say, like, cartoonists have all different kinds of personalities, but
we joke that it's all a bunch of shut-ins, but I know there's a range of introvert, extroverts, and yeah.
It's interesting. I wonder what you think about this, but I can tell some people, because they are shut-ins, it's like this is their time that they were, and it's so it's like kind of funny because they're shut-ins and they're not talking to anyone, and then all of a sudden they're here and they become like the most talkative people you've ever met because it's like they have a year of not talking to anyone.
Right. And I'm largely the same way. There are parts of my job, there are times where I will not talk to anybody but my wife for like 3 or 4 days at a stretch, and then it's oh my God, I am oversharing with everybody I'm talking to because I haven't had any interaction.
Yeah.
Coming here has been weird. I did CXC last year, Mocha this past spring, but that was like a quick hit, running around seeing people. Spending time here has been, well, as I mentioned before we started recording, I've been up till 1 a.m. both both days. I go to bed at like 9:30 back in my real life. So it's just been the hanging out at the bar, catching up with friends, seeing people you haven't seen, and it's good as a hanger-on. Of course, as a guy who doesn't actually make comics or anything, it's still
you're contributing a lot here.
I do my part through all the recording. But yeah, it's the, finding out how people's lives have been, especially when you haven't seen someone for a few years, even if I've recorded like remotely with them.
Mm-hmm. That's a different conversation.
Right. And it's as opposed to this, it's set for like the podcast or posterity or whatever, just sitting with Eddie Campbell and shooting the breeze and at the bar, and then taking him and a few people to a restaurant. And just the amount of ball busting everybody does with each other is also, fun. It's good. This is just get people together. They've all got history. They can all, have some fun with each other.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to ask you, how long have you been coming to this convention for? Because I was trying to figure that out for myself recently.
Well, I have a big disconnect. My very first one was 1998, but I didn't come back until like 2012 when I started doing the show.
Oh, okay.
I think. And Tom Spurgeon was my conduit for all things comics. So it was Tom coming out from out west to go to SPX. I'll come down from New Jersey. And since then, it's been every year except for pandemic time. I skipped last year when they came back just because I have some issues. And this time...
You don't have to come every year. I don't,
that was part of the thing.
I was
like, yeah, I could, but mentally I'm still going through some stuff. And, I went to CXC at the last minute last year. Literally the day before, I woke up and realized I have to go to Columbus because there are things I need to do in terms of losing Tom and finally getting back to living and getting into a community of cartoonists and people who know my work, which means the show will be more about me than you. But, this is what we do when we talk to each other.
I'm happy for that, yeah.
But yeah, coming back this year, I thought, okay, there are people I want to see. And, I feel comfortable just, coming down like in a band or even in a jazz thing, just, quipping, contributing, not having to be a lead figure in anything, but, just getting to see people again. And then recording a couple of good conversations. But yeah, it's I think from 2012, outside of pandemic, I've been every year. Just because it's good. This is a place I can sit down with people and have a conversation instead of... It's funny, 2 out of the 3 guests I'm recording with this weekend live in New York, and technically I could have come to see them and sit down with them in person there, but, the festival makes things more convenient, I guess, for
Absolutely,
people. So.
Yeah.
And for you, how many years were you...
I think that I started coming in around 2005.
Wow.
And it's been really... I've been thinking back on it a lot because I used to come here by myself. I didn't know anybody. I would buy a table and sit there all day for 2 days. And, I barely had any comics. I would have like 2 comics because I hadn't done much work yet. And then I would make these little like pins and crafts to sell just to try to make the table money back. And it was so stressful. And so I was just thinking about myself over the years, and I'm going, okay, like when did I first get published? So the first time I came here as someone who to sit at like the Fantagraphics table wasn't until 2011. Yeah. And then moving forward from that. And so now, I feel very lucky having gone through the whole range of SPX of, coming here by myself on the Chinatown bus and, sticking it out at the convention. Now I feel very leisurely, it's like, let's do a podcast, then I'll sign
I'll head down eventually.
Yeah, I'll head down eventually, sign for an hour, and then I'll take the Acela back to New York,
Go in style. That's If you ever get an upgrade coupon or you're willing to blow the extra money, do first class on the Acela. They serve meals. There's no pay. They just give you a menu and ask what you want. Usually tip when you get off the train at the end. Okay. But they will bring you nice food. I've had several celebrity encounters on the Acela also with Spike Lee, Louis Black, and gosh, who was the other one? Usually it's congressional people who I also interact with for my day job. But there was another celebrity Acela. I can't remember now. They'll hit me at 2:00 in the morning, and I'll suddenly say, I got to zap Leslie about this.
In the post notes or in the pre-taping.
As a caveat goes, I did remember, But yeah, this one I figured out. I thought about taking the train, but realized I have stuff to carry, things to do. I'm like, I'll just drove.
Yeah. So, that's good.
And it let me drive to the Carol Tyler and Justin Green documentary on Friday, which was...
I heard that was really great. I got to talk to her for a long time about it last night. So she's very happy with it, which is lovely.
It's good, and it's... So I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the Nirvana cover band. Last November, you had a strip in the New Yorker about Nirvana t-shirts and the whole question of what a poser is. I have the suspicion that it's probably the most circulated work of yours.
Definitely.
And gained the most feedback or response. What's it like having something that kind of takes on a life of its own, I guess?
I looked at the Reddit feed.
Yeah.
Oh, people... Oh, they hated me for that comic. It was hilarious because the comic was a joke.
Yeah.
And basically the premise was my characters walk around New York, and this is true. Like every day I see like at least 5 Nirvana shirts.
From people who were born after Kurt Cobain's death.
Yeah, which for me is an issue. It's for me that they're getting it at like Old Navy and they think it's a cool image and they don't know the band. Now, also, so it's also the character going like, well, this is just fashion. It has nothing to do with music. It's just fashion. And that's being okay.
Yeah.
But then making jokes with friends like, yeah, but they're still posers anyways. But the thing I did on purpose, I wasn't trying to like make anyone feel bad. Like the first thing she said, like, I have this funny feeling that these kids don't actually listen to Nirvana. And that's like a picture of a baby in a Nirvana onesie. It's like, what's there to be upset about? Like,
yeah.
Anywho, but it worked out great for me because it did well. So I got a little extra money from it doing well. Then the manager of Nirvana ended up reaching out to me and was like, the whole camp loves this comic.
Yeah.
And so I actually sold him some prints of the comic, which I think he gave to Chris Novoselic, who sent me a postcard.
Who you also celebrate in the strip as
and my favorite Nirvana member is Chris Novoselic. And so all those comments about like, what does she know? I'm like, well, I'm friends with them. Well, not friends with them, but like I'm in contact with them and they seem to enjoy it. So that's all that matters to me.
And there's a good degree of people deliberately misreading whatever they want to misread and just put their own thing on it. Because everything you said, it holds up. I mean, it's not goofing on these people. It's more, satirically doing this. And the idea that you're walking around with a film crew while you're asking questions about this stuff should imply that this isn't real. It's funny, but yeah.
Then he did send me a box of Nirvana t-shirts.
Nice.
And they're so bad. Like, there's one that's like, the smiley face.
Yeah.
So they're doing it with like a Andy Warhol version where it's like, and I started realizing, I'm like, they are making these bad on purpose because they're just selling them out. They're like, we license all this stuff. Who cares? Let's sell them. Yeah. And so they kind of make them bad. I have another one I love that's just a heart-shaped box. I'm like, wow. There was a lot of thought put into this. And a hoodie that just says Incesticide. So now I'm one of those people who wears the Nirvana merch.
Yeah, see, but at least you can say you listened to them.
Yes.
And you can decide whether Incesticide is an album or not.
Yes, exactly.
EP, it doesn't really count. But yeah, I just thought it was so funny seeing something like that blow up. I'm like, that's, because I love you guys. And there's artists I always want to see. There's always the be careful what you wish for, but that sense of like, wow, this is showing up on my feeds from people who do not really care about comics, but are latching on suddenly. So
yeah, I had fun with it. I think a few friends, when they saw some of the vitriol being passed my way, were like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Dude, there's internet dog piles, and then there's real internet dog piles. Yeah. That's just there's people who don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah,
it's fine.
It's fine.
Like you say, it's Reddit. Let it go.
It's funny. Yeah.
But how do you feel your art's been changing or evolving? Because this book, it feels looser and yet more expressive than some of the previous stuff. And I don't know how to characterize it because I am not really a drawing guy, especially not painting with the palette that you use and the control that you demonstrate with this stuff just always blows my goddamn mind because I can't make a brush do anything the fuck that I want it to.
Yes, you can. I've seen your drawings.
Yeah, but not as the things you do with a minimum of lines that even with the characters being this very idiosyncratic bodies that you use, they express everything so well. And I don't know if you feel like you're on a sort of arc with that, or if you've just reached a certain, I know how to do what I'm doing now.
I think that I know how to do what I'm doing now to an extent, but I'm also trying to get better always. So I think this book is actually the most dense version of this style.
Yeah.
Because the characters themselves, I think the work can be a little misleading because people look at the characters and go like, this is very simple. But then if you look at the backgrounds, you're going, oh, there's actually a lot of detail.
Yeah.
And it takes me about 5 hours to do a page. And I'm enjoying the detail and different colors. And so for my next book, I'd like to go a little bigger so I can even do denser work, which is, that means I'm reaching the end of a style, which I also did with Majestic Creature, was like the stippling and the denseness. And then all of a sudden I was like, okay, the style, I can't do more with this, you know? And so then I think it's getting there with this. So it's kind of breathing over the years, you know?
Do you suspect where you're headed next?
I have an idea for another book.
But I mean, in terms of style or what you're pursuing, or do you have to really discover that as you're...
Yeah,
I assume, but yeah.
Yeah, it's all experimental. Mm-hmm. So it's all just making mistakes and then seeing what are good mistakes and what mistakes not to do.
One of the greatest things I've ever made was just wow, that screwed up, and oh my God, that came out tremendous, even though it was not what I was intending in the slightest. And you know, it's your happy accidents, I guess. You're doing a series also on Instagram now of full moon strips. I have no idea if that's intended to be another thing that becomes a project, or if it's just a nice exercise of sorts for you.
Yeah, I think I just started doing it because I didn't have a big project, and so I want to keep my hands moving, and that gives me a little deadline every month. Mm-hmm. And so I was thinking, okay, I have a lot of moon stories. I love the moon, and I like the idea of having a ritual around drawing. Mm-hmm. So I just thought, okay, I kind of ran out of moon stories, so I think I did like 9 or 10.
Yeah. So I wasn't sure because I'm like, I think they're every month, but yeah. Know. And we had 2 in a month this past one, so you would have been under more pressure. Mm-hmm. But do you have a practice or routine otherwise? Are you able to
Yeah.
Are you drawing every X amount of time or set time a day?
When I'm working on a book, yes. Mm-hmm. And I'm getting more and more locked into a schedule that I like. I became a morning person.
Yeah.
I love it. So wake up, go running. Mm-hmm. I don't like sitting very much, so cartooning, that's like one of the hardest parts of cartooning. Yeah. So if I run in the morning and that's my ritual, it's like I'm okay to sit for long periods of time. And then finish by 5 and then, have kind of like a few hours to walk around if I want. And that's like a perfect schedule for me. Yeah. So I'm excited to get back to that.
Yeah. It's something I hadn't hit on until very recently with another, a prose author. Do you get the empty nest syndrome / I'll say postpartum depression, basically, when a book is done before you're on the next project?
This is the first time I've never had another book in the works before it came out. Yeah. No, I didn't, actually. I was really excited to be done with this book because it's 300 pages, and I did it, the main bulk of it, in a year and a half, which is an insane amount of work.
Because when you mentioned still not doing a magnum opus, and this is 300 pages, right. I was sort of wondering, like, is she going like Dash Shaw 700 pages or something down the line? Because I really don't think that's the direction.
I think it's more like the conceptual version of like doing something important.
Yeah, that's what I was figuring. But just the Gravity's Rainbow of Leslie Stein is also we don't need that. We just need what's
exactly.
important.
No, the next one hopefully just do. Well, it's interesting because I think in publishing right now they're really. I was asking them with this book, it's like, what do you like for page counts in order to sell the book and make it worth printing? And so they either want it around like under 140, around 140, or over like 250 to make it work. So that's why I kind of stretched it. But then as I was stretching it, other things come up and end up being longer. So,
and it doesn't feel as though there's a padding by any means. I mean, it still just has that organic flowing road trip, and you're experiencing these guys in their lives and top 5 or top list questions in the van, and
Well, thank you. That's kind of you to say.
Yeah. No, that's again, it's part of why I enjoy the heck out of your work, because even if I don't know where it's going, I know it's going somewhere good, like the band. But that's that sort of thing. I will ask, the moment that Lilith has where she tells a friend that the one thing you can't do on a tour is open up emotionally and covers up. Your experience, is it your experience as a woman in a all-male band otherwise, or is it just no one talks about their emotions when they're really...
Yeah, I think people tend to keep it light, which I actually think is a positive thing.
Yeah.
Because you could read that and go like, oh, like everyone's trying to be
they're
tough.
Emotionally stunted. Yeah. No.
That's not what she was trying to say, and not how I feel either. Yeah. I think it's a kindness to people when you're on the road with them, that you're not unloading on them and you're trying. Everyone's doing that for each other. Like, let's keep it light. Let's, and if you have a breakdown, fine. But for the most part, I think it's
nobody wants.
Also, it's kind of a job, and like you're getting from one place to another, and it's stressful, and it's like, if you can keep it light and jovial, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't had an office job since 2014, but the corollary of that, of people who have to bring everybody else down when you're not in the van, when you're in the office and it's not going anywhere, it's one of those like, we'd really rather not have to hear this on a daily basis. Let's just talk about football or something dumb, So yeah, I wondered whether it was a critique or just an observation in terms of,
more of an observation.
This is how it functions well.
Yeah, definitely not a critique.
Yeah. But she does manage to turn her moment of almost emotional openness into a joke about electronic music. So,
yeah, exactly.
I felt pretty good about. But it is weird because all three guests I'm recording with this weekend, there is a fusion of music and comics in the work. Keith Knight, we talked about his Michael Jackson impersonation as a 16 or 17-year-old in a comic that's interspersed with his writing about music. Josh Baer wrote a lot of what punk rock is and how it translates into his comics. And now yours. And you were on a panel yesterday at SPX, which I didn't get to go to because you end up talking to someone and get dragged away, on, dancing about architecture, the idea of making comics about a different art form. How did it go? Did you feel like you contributed anything, or was it was there anything you learned from, other people talking about making comics about other forms?
Yeah, I liked it. I think it was a good panel. I think that it was broad. I mean, really what those panels are meant to do is like put an umbrella over a bunch of artists, which is really difficult to do.
Yeah.
So for me, I think about it less as like, I stayed on topic, of course, was polite, but for me, it's just a chance it's a springboard, just talk about your work. And also the thing that I try to do, I don't know if you can tell, it's like, I'm not that interested in coming off like super intelligent and well-spoken. I think more what you're trying to do when you're trying to get people into your works, this is entertainment. And if you can entertain them being there, and that's better than showing them how smart you are about a certain topic.
Yeah.
So it's more about being warm and welcoming to me and kind of trying to have a good time with the situation at hand,
Being enthusiastic about your work. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what was funny reading the panel, or panel description, I thought, Brooklyn's last tour isn't about the music, it's about everything in between the music. Exactly. It's literally the same line of one song every time we see them on stage. It's just that one thing. You're not really getting that, although you get moments where they're in the audience and you're getting your graphic and sensory depiction of what it's like being in certain audiences during certain sets. But yeah, it's much more about a bunch of people as opposed to the experience of music.
100%. It's like character study and about, what that life is kind of like. But I was able to find a couple panels from him from other comics I've done that are about recording music and they're silent. And it's just about like the colors interacting when the different instruments turn on. And so that was kind of a fun exercise. So I brought that up and talked about like color and composition as it relates to music and as it relates to comics and art,
Yeah, were you aware of that thread in your work? before, sitting down and kind of looking through for stuff like this? Is this something that you were conscious, I guess, of making over the years? Making comics that were reflecting what your music experience was like?
Actually, yeah. Yeah, I was, because I go through phases of music, but like, for example, like I use music as a mood enhancer, if I'm walking, I have songs I listen to that are rhythmic that help me think, but also if I'm just working on a painting or something, I feel like that 100% infuses the painting with the feeling I'm getting. And I was talking a little about this on the panel about Kandinsky and Paul Klee, and how they're both extremely, a lot of their work was based on the music they were listening to, but Paul Klee, if you look at his work, he almost sets up some of the design like sheet music because he was classically trained. So there are these intricate spaces that are mathematical, the way instruments fit together. And the stuff he was listening to at the time, was not like Jimi Hendrix like me, but it was, I can't remember who his favorite composer was. But then you had Kandinsky, who was just going pure emotional reaction, which is what I do. And I don't think it's like, I don't know how to pronounce this correctly. It was synesthetic.
Yeah, that's how I would pronounce it. Okay. So I'm hoping we're both right.
It's not that, but it's just like there's certain things. If you're listening to like a dark, brooding song, it's like you're gonna kind of reach for like dark blues and like browns and stuff like that. And if you're listening to like the Beach Boys, like you're gonna reach for yellow. Yeah, it's not like rocket science.
Yeah, those are the dominant modes. Yeah. Do you listen to music with vocals when you're writing comics?
No.
I assume not. No. I know people who do.
Really?
With writing in general, I can't hear anything but instrumental music if I'm doing anything involving words. And other people can, and I'm just like, your brain must be, my brain doesn't work or your brain doesn't work, but something doesn't work here if,
I'm so particular about writing. I go to the library where it's dead quiet and go to the quiet room, and that's where I do my writing. Or sometimes if it's like a funny New Yorker comic or something, I can go to a bar and write because there's so much sound that it cancels each other out. But if there's just a small amount of sound, and then when I'm doing my initial setup with the page, I would never listen to music either. I would listen to a podcast or something because I don't know, music could get you too excited. Yeah. You want to?
No, I believe it. I put
even
on
after I go running in the morning.
Yeah, I never have music when I'm running. Usually I run with guys, so we'd always be gabbing.
You don't listen to music when you're running?
No, I'm afraid I'm going to get hit by a car. The only time if I'm in a hotel treadmill, I'll put on. There's a very funny Amazon playlist, some sort of tempo running playlist. I'm like, sure, I'll put that on, which is how I discovered Pitbull.
That'll do it.
I had no idea, and I was like, oh, so that's who this is and what it sounds like. And yes, I will run about 9.5 miles an hour while doing this because,
it works.
It was kind of an interesting thing. And I was like, well, that's fine. But when I'm out running, it's usually with the guys. Or even if I'm solo, I just like taking in the world around me. Drawing, just always my joke when I have to explain what a goddamned old man I am. I really settled on Gordon Lightfoot. I just put on Gordon Lightfoot channel and just have that on the headphones and just lean in and get to drawing. Which I figure you appreciate a pretty wide spread of music, but
I can send you my drawing playlist if you want.
Oh, please. Yeah.
You don't have,
no,
if you
I'll
want
check
to
it out for
try
sure.
it. Yeah.
Because I've fallen into I've slowed down significantly in the last 8 or 9 months with drawing, and I suspect it was actually showing my stuff to a couple of guests who were artists. Not that they were critical or mean, but I think it messed up my head. Whereas before I was just posting things online because I knew I would never encounter anyone in the real world. They'd never see my stuff. I actually showed a few people, including like Jerry Saltz at New York Magazine, the art critic, but not in a critical way. The only person who was critical was Thomas Woodruff, who stop with the fucking microns, Gil. Learn how to use a fucking brush. I'm like, okay, I started at 50, okay? I never went to art school, blah, blah, blah.
I love Tom. I love that he is unapologetically Tom. He said stuff like me. He's like, this work is dinky, and I'm going like, all right, I was like, well, I can't do what you do.
We had a time. We had a really good conversation, but he was also, it was whatever the hell carbon pencil he was using for that Francis Rothbard. Try using this. Like, I don't even know what the hell to do with this. I can't even sharpen it, for Christ's sake.
I use microns. I'm on your side.
Yeah,
Whatever makes you feel good when you're doing it is what you should use.
Yeah, I'll show you a little bit of a sketchbook after, but, just because I refuse to bring lots of stuff with me. Although, as it turns out, for SPX, we all forgot stuff to take with us. I forgot to grab a few issues of my zine, which I was going to give out to a couple of people.
Of course.
Eddie Campbell forgot all of his art stuff.
No.
Yeah. So he basically was buying like a pencil and a pen in like an airport gift shop. So, something to inscribe books with. I'm like, Eddie, somebody here would have probably lent you something to write with or draw with. I think you would have been safe, but...
Yeah, I think he could probably borrow a couple things.
I had my little kit that I brought in case I felt like doing something real, but of course I ended up talking to people the whole time. But yeah, we all had things. Oh shit, I forgot to grab, whatever it was.
I had that moment of panic on the train, and I had my my bag up in the luggage compartment, and then I'm like... Because I remember putting the pencils in my pencil case that I wanted, and I picked the colors. Okay, these go together, and so every drawing will be okay in the books. But I was like, did I put it in my suitcase?
Yeah.
And so I got up and checked. So yeah, it happens.
We all have our little thing. In fact, for you, getting back to shows and festivals, has it been re-entry? Did you feel comfortable just getting back into the vibe? Not COVID comfortable, but just, I have to get back to going out and seeing people at a festival.
Yeah, for me, it's not a big deal because I also, I've been bartending.
Yeah, it's true.
So
your job is
it's people
interacting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mine is hiding in the woods. So
that sounds good to me too.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I'll put it that way. But it's a different world in a lot of respects. But so when you mention next project, is next project a thing, or is it a kind of figuring out next project?
I've been writing it, but I haven't started drawing it yet.
Okay.
So it's not worth talking about, really.
I know not to jinx anybody by asking. I just wasn't sure if you're in the middle of working on something, in which case I would jinx you a little bit. But
no. Yeah, not yet.
And who are you seeing anybody here that you're, holy shit, I can't believe I got to catch up with this person or that person? Or did you pick up any good comics?
I haven't even really navigated the room yet. That's what today is for. Yeah. Last night was great. I went to dinner with Fantagraphics, so I got to see, Gary Groth, who I've known forever since I've, for, like 19 years I've known him. Yeah. And then finally meet his son, Conrad, for the first time. Then I met some wonderful people that they just began to publish from Spain. I got to talk to...
I met one of the Annas. I met yesterday, and it was like...
Isn't she lovely?
Yeah, she's just an effusive personality. I'm like, you shouldn't be in comics. You actually have a big sunny self. That's
Yeah, I had to have her... We had a little talk outside the restaurant. She's like, why are people like this? I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. But you can hang out with me if you want. She's like, okay, I will. She was great. And so it's been really nice. I don't feel like I need to go around the room and say hi to everybody.
No, and that's also part of the... You've been here a whole bunch of years.
Yeah.
Now you know a lot of people I'm never going to... I don't know, and you'll soon start reaching they're half my age count, which...
Oh, they about are, yeah.
Yeah, I was here a few hours early on Friday, and it was, don't know you, you're all at least half my age at most. I'm, looking at them. Eventually I saw Eddie go walking by. I'm like, oh, thank God, white hair, and then we could sit down and talk. But it's a different sort of world, I guess. But
it was great. It's very heartening because, I was signing yesterday next to Bill Griffith, and he had this long line, and I was like, thank God, like, people still...
respect and
understand that this man's, this is a big deal.
You've been reading anything that you want to share? Or is there a book that made you plots in the last, it's been over 2 years since we talked. But...
The last book I read, I think you interviewed a friend of mine.
John Ray?
Yeah, John Ray.
Yeah, I was just because he blurbed your book, and I was going to ask how you guys know each other. I assume music and everything else. But
we're neighbors in Brooklyn, and so we had mutual friends. And then he has like a practice space in his basement, so he invited me over. He kind of has this revolving cast of people he has over to play music with him. So I came over one day and kind of never left because I'm like, well, I can just walk 5 blocks and plug in. And
it's a wonderful, the house is wonderful. I haven't been downstairs to the basement.
Yeah,
but,
it's fantastic.
Yeah,
so.
John and I recorded April after yet more trauma in my life. I got to sit down with John and have let's just talk about your book about death metal for a while, your novel. And that's when I saw he blurbed this, I'm like, if she hasn't read Gone to the Wolves, she should. So I figured though you'd be connected enough.
So that's the last book I read that I really loved, and so I'm a very slow reader in New York, and I've been working all summer on. I just started teaching SVA, so I've been putting together the class, and I'm moving, so that's why I also haven't started a new project yet because I want to be kind of in a space where once I start going, I'm just going to run and work on it because I hate having to stop a project because if you haven't worked on something for a week or two and you look at it, you're like, what was I thinking? So you can't allow yourself to get in that mindset. You just got to start and keep going.
About the move, did you look at the place and consider the drawing possibly? Okay, I don't know if that's like a factor for artists. If you look around, like I need to go to this place because the light is really good here, and I'm gonna
and how a space feels like. Do I think this room is like cozy? Would I want to wake up and come spend all my time in here? And what's the feeling like? As the kids say, the vibe. Yeah. So I was checking out all the vibes, and so I think I found a place with a good vibe. It's near the park, so I can run every day. So that was a consideration. So. It's just about packing up my stuff, and moving's stressful.
Well, the joke is, of course, I live in the house I grew up in. I'm the one guy who knows nothing about moving, but everybody else does. The world moves around me. Mm-hmm. That's basically it. But I understand.
You can imagine.
Oh yeah, I did move in like 2000. I moved back in 2003. So yeah, I get it. But generally, I have the fuck it. If I stay here long enough, I'll die, and they can just take me out after. That's I've even figured out the. As I get older and can't handle the stairs, I'll just come in through the back door, and that's ground level. We'll just move a bed here, and I'll have all my books around me, and then somebody will find me eventually, and that'll be it. Not really something to hope for, but that's the ostensible plan of the moment. But I do have to get your new address once you're finally moved, so you can get on the Gil Roth postcard list also, which is important. But I'll let you get back to SPX. I won't stress you about a next project, but I will ask if you'll sign and draw something in the book before you go.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on, Leslie.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
And that was Leslie Stein. Her new book is Brooklyn's Last Secret from Drawn and Quarterly. I loved it, as you can tell from the conversation. I'm also a big mark for Leslie's work in general, but this one brought me a different sort of joy, So do yourself a favor, go buy Brooklyn's Last Secret, go enjoy a comic. It's a lot of fun. It's very thoughtful, but doesn't wear its meaning on its sleeve, if you get me. You should also check out Leslie's work at her Instagram, Leslie A.M. Stein. That's LESLIEAMSTEIN. And visit Drawn and Quarterly site to see more of her recent work. I'll also put a link in the show and episode notes to the page where you can buy her original art, as well as the links I just mentioned. And I forgot to get her drawing playlist from her, but I will hit her up about that and maybe post that in future. Now you can support the Virtual Memory Show by telling other people about it. Let them know there's this podcast comes out every week with really fun conversations with really interesting, creative people. You can also help out the show by telling me what you like and don't like about it and who you'd like to hear me record with or what movie or TV show or book or piece of music or theater or art exhibition or indie band or whatever you think I should turn listeners on to. And you can do that by email, DM if we're connected on social media, postcard or letter. My mailing address is at the bottom of the email that I send out twice a week through Substack, or by leaving a message on my Google Voice number, which is 973-869-9659. That goes directly to voicemail, so you don't have to worry about getting stuck in an awkward conversation with me. And messages can be up to 3 minutes long. So if you go longer than that, you'll get cut off. Just call back, leave another message. And let me know if you'd be okay to include your message in an upcoming episode of the show. You might have something interesting to share with listeners, but I would never do something like that without the speaker's approval. So let me know. Now, if you got money or resources to spare, don't give it to me. I mean, money's nice. I appreciate the gesture of supporting this weird mission that I'm on. You can support it through Patreon or through subscribing to my Substack and going to the paid tier. That's vmspod.substack.com. But really, give money to people who need it or to institutions that need it. When it comes to people, you can find them through GoFundMe, Patreon, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Crowdfunder, or Substack, depending on, if they do a newsletter that you're interested in. If you're looking for somewhere to start with institutions or foundations, I give to my local food bank every month, occasionally make contributions to the Poor People's Campaign, Women's Choice, and Planned Parenthood. I make targeted election contributions, but I'm a lobbyist by day, so that's part of my job. But what I'm saying is, there are a lot of things you can do if you've got a little money to spare to help us build a better world. So, I hope you will. Our music for this episode is Fella by Hal Mayforth, used with permission from the artist. You should visit my archives to check out my episode with Hal from the summer of 2018 and learn more about his art and painting. And you can listen to his music at soundcloud.com/Mayforth. And that's MAY4TH. And that's it for this week's episode of the Virtual Memories Show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with another great conversation. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show and download past episodes at the iTunes Store. You can also find all our episodes and get on our email list at either of our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/VM. You can also follow the Virtual Memories Show on Twitter and Instagram at vmspod, at virtualmemoriespodcast.tumblr.com, and on YouTube, Spotify, and TuneIn.com by searching for Virtual Memories Show. And if you like this podcast, please tell your pals, talk it up on social media, and go to iTunes, look up the Virtual Memories Show, and leave a rating and maybe a review for us. It all goes to helping us build a bigger audience. Now, you've been listening to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth. Keep reading, keep making art, and keep the conversation going.